Sarah Martinez had always been the type of person who found beauty in small moments. At 17, she had learned to navigate the world from her wheelchair with a grace that impressed everyone around her. Born with spina bifida, she'd never known life any other way, and honestly, she wouldn't change it. Her wheelchair wasn't a limitation to her, it was simply part of who she was, like her dark curly hair or her infectious laugh that could light up any room. Lincoln High School. Buzzed with the usual energy of a Tuesday morning in October, students hurried through the hallways, clutching coffee cups and backpacks, rushing to beat the first bell. Sarah moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her electric wheelchair humming softly as she navigated between groups of chattering teenagers. She had memorized every bump, every narrow passage, and every accessible route in the school over her 3 years there. Sarah. "Wait up!" her best friend Maya called from behind, jogging to catch up while balancing a stack of textbooks. Maya had been Sarah's closest friend since middle school, and their friendship had weathered every storm that high school could throw at them. "Did you finish the chemistry homework?" "I'm completely lost on those equations." Sarah grinned, patting the neat folder in her lap. "Of course I did. You know me, actually enjoy chemistry. There's something satisfying about balancing equations and predicting reactions." She had always been academically inclined, maintaining a 4.0 GPA despite the additional challenges she sometimes faced. Her teachers respected her dedication, and her classmates had long since stopped seeing her wheelchair first and started seeing Sarah, the girl who could explain complex math problems, who organized the best study groups, and who never missed an opportunity to help others. As they approached Sarah's locker, Maya lowered her voice. "Have you noticed that new kid, Jake Morrison, staring at you lately?" "Not in a weird way," she added quickly, seeing Sarah's raised eyebrow. "More like he's trying to figure something out." Sarah had indeed noticed Jake. He had transferred to Lincoln just 3 weeks ago from somewhere in Texas. Tall and lean with sandy, brown hair that always seemed slightly messy. He had the kind of quiet confidence that drew attention without trying. Unlike many new students who tried too hard to fit in, Jake seemed content to observe, to learn the social landscape before making his move. He was polite in class, answered questions when called upon, but kept mostly to himself during lunch and between classes. What Sarah had noticed most about Jake wasn't his reserved nature or his slight southern accent that slipped out when he was frustrated. It was the way he looked at her, not with pity or curiosity like some people did when they first met her, but with genuine interest. When their eyes met across the cafeteria or in the hallway, he would nod respectfully and sometimes offer a small smile. There was something different about him, something that made Sarah feel seen rather than stared at. "I don't know what you mean," Sarah replied, though she absolutely knew what Maya meant. "He seems nice enough." Quiet, but nice. The truth was, Sarah had been thinking about Jake more than she cared to admit. In her AP literature class, she had overheard him discussing To Kill a Mockingbird with such insight and passion that it had surprised her. He had talked about justice and standing up for what's right with a conviction that seemed beyond his years. When Mrs. Henderson had asked the class to write about personal heroes, Jake had written about his grandfather, a man who had dedicated his life to helping others despite facing his own challenges. As Sarah opened her locker, she could see Jake at his own locker just 20 feet away. He was methodically organizing his books, and she noticed he had a small photo taped inside his locker, an older man in military uniform, standing next to a young boy. She assumed it was the grandfather he had written about, and something about the careful way Jake had positioned the photo told her it held deep meaning for him. The first bell rang, and students began moving toward their classrooms with more urgency. Sarah grabbed her literature textbook and closed her locker, the familiar routine of another school day beginning. She had English first period, followed by calculus, then chemistry with Maya. It was a schedule she enjoyed, filled with subjects that challenged her mind and teachers who appreciated her enthusiasm for learning. As she moved through the hallway, Sarah felt a sense of contentment. Senior year was treating her well so far. She had already been accepted to 3 colleges, their top choice being State University, where she planned to study biochemistry. Her guidance counselor had assured her that the campus was fully accessible, She had even connected Sarah with a current student who also used a wheelchair. The future felt bright and full of possibilities, but life has a way of changing in an instant. And Sarah Martinez was about to learn that even in the safest places, darkness can suddenly intrude. The hallway that had felt so familiar and secure was about to become the setting for an event that would test not only her own strength, but also revealed the true character of those around her as she rounded the corner toward her English classroom. Sarah had no idea that 3 students were waiting in the empty hallway near the gymnasium. Students who had been watching her for days, students who had decided that someone different, someone vulnerable, would make an easy target for their cruel entertainment. She had no way of knowing that her peaceful Tuesday morning was about to become something else entirely. Something that would require her to find reserves of courage she didn't know she possessed. The second bell rang in the distance, and Sarah quickened her pace slightly, not wanting to be late for class. Mrs. Henderson always started promptly, and Sarah respected teachers who valued time and preparation. As she moved down the empty hallway, the familiar sounds of the school seemed to fade, replaced by an unusual quiet that should have felt peaceful but somehow didn't. What happened next would change everything. Not just for Sarah, but for everyone who witnessed it, and most especially for a quiet boy from Texas who was about to discover what it truly meant to stand up for what's right. The hallway near the old gymnasium was always quieter than the main corridors of Lincoln High School. It was a shortcut that many students used, but during class time, it remained largely deserted. Sarah had taken this route hundreds of times before, never thinking twice about the isolated stretch that connected the main building to the science wing. Today, however, 3 students had positioned themselves strategically in this very hallway, waiting. Tyler Brooks was the ringleader, a senior who had repeated his junior year and carried the anger of that failure like a chip on his shoulder. At 18, he was bigger than most students, with a reputation for bullying that teachers had tried unsuccessfully to address. His followers, Marcus Chen and Devin Williams, were younger but equally troubled, seeking acceptance from someone they saw as powerful, even if that power came from hurting others. "Here she comes," Tyler whispered, his voice carrying a cruel excitement that made Marcus shift uncomfortably. The 3 boys had been planning this for days, watching Sarah's routine, noting when she was most likely to be alone. Tyler had convinced the others that picking on the wheelchair girl would be easy, entertaining, and without consequence. After all, who would she tell? And who would believe her word over theirs? Sarah approached the intersection of hallways, her mind focused on the essay she needed to turn in for English class. She had spent hours perfecting her analysis of Harper Lee's use of symbolism, and she was particularly proud of her insights about the mockingbird metaphor. Literature had always been her escape, a world where she could explore human nature and moral complexity from the safety of her wheelchair. Well, Tyler's voice echoed off the empty hallway walls as he stepped into Sarah's path. "Look what we have here." Sarah's heart immediately began racing, but she kept her expression calm. She had encountered bullies before, though never in such an isolated setting. Her instinct was to remain polite but firm, to de-escalate the situation and continue on her way. "Excuse me," she said politely. "I need to get to class." Tyler laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth. "Oh, you need to get to class? How exactly are you planning to do that?" He moved closer, and Marcus and Devin flanked him, forming a human barrier that blocked Sarah's path completely. "Look, I don't want any trouble," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the fear growing in her chest. "Please just let me pass." "Or what?" Devin sneered, emboldened by Tyler's presence. "What are you going to do about it? Run away?" The cruelty of the comment hit its mark, and Sarah felt a flash of anger mixed with her fear. She had dealt with ignorance and thoughtless remarks before, but this was different. This was calculated meanness, designed specifically to hurt and humiliate. "You think you're so special," Tyler continued, his voice growing louder. "Rolling around here like you own the place, getting all that attention from teachers, getting special treatment. Must be nice to have everyone feel sorry for you all the time." Sarah's hands tightened on her wheelchair's armrests. "I don't get special treatment. I work just as hard as everyone else." Sure you do, Marcus chimed in, his voice uncertain but trying to please Tyler. That's why you get extra time on tests and get to skip pay. Class. Those aren't privileges, Sarah replied, her voice firmer now. Those are accommodations that allow me to participate equally. There's a difference. Tyler's face darkened at her response. He had expected tears, begging, or submission. Instead, he was getting a lecture from someone he considered beneath him. You know what? I think you need to learn some respect. What happened next unfolded in slow motion for Sarah. Tyler reached for the controls of her wheelchair, attempting to override her electric system. When that didn't work immediately, he grabbed one of her armrests and began trying to tip her chair backward. Sarah's hands flew to her wheels, trying to maintain balance and control. Stop it, she shouted, her voice echoing down the empty hallway. Leave me alone. Marcus stepped back, suddenly uncomfortable with how far this was going. Tyler, maybe we should shut up, Tyler snapped, still struggling with Sarah's chair. The wheelchair was heavier than he had anticipated, and Sarah was fighting back more than he had expected. Her upper body strength, developed through years of navigating her world, was considerable. Devin, caught up in the momentum and afraid of looking weak in front of Tyler, decided to join in. He grabbed Sarah's backpack and began pulling it from her lap, spilling books and papers across the floor. Her carefully prepared English essay scattered across the dirty hallway tiles. Please stop, Sarah pleaded, but her voice was drowned out by the boys' laughter and taunts. It was at this exact moment that Jake Morrison rounded the corner. He had been on his way to the library to return a book when he heard voices echoing from the gymnasium hallway. Something about the tone had made him pause and listen more carefully. When he heard Sarah's voice calling for them to stop, he didn't hesitate. Jake took in the scene, immediately 3 boys surrounding Sarah. Her papers scattered on the floor, Tyler's hands on her wheelchair. The injustice of it hit him like a physical blow. 3 against 1, and that one was a girl who couldn't simply run away. Everything his grandfather had taught him about standing up for others, about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, crystallized in that moment. Jake's voice cracked like a whip down the hallway, and all 4 students turned toward him. What's going on here? Tyler released Sarah's wheelchair and straightened up, trying to look casual. Nothing, man. Just talking to our friend here. Jake's eyes met Sarah's for a split second, and he saw the fear and humiliation there. He also saw something else, a quiet strength that was holding her together despite everything. Doesn't look like talking to me, he said, his voice deadly calm as he walked closer. Mind your own business, new boy, Tyler warned, puffing out his chest. At 6'2", he had intimidated plenty of students before. This doesn't concern you. Jake stopped about 10 feet away, his body language relaxed but ready. Actually, it does concern me. See, where I come from, we don't pick on people who can't fight back. We especially don't gang up 3-on-1 against a girl. The tension in the hallway ratcheted up several notches. Marcus and Devin looked between Tyler and Jake, suddenly unsure of themselves. This wasn't going according to plan. Tyler had assured them this would be easy, fun even. Now they were facing a potential fight with someone who looked like he knew how to handle himself. You don't know what you're talking about, Tyler said. But his voice lacked its earlier confidence. I know exactly what I'm talking about, Jake replied, taking another step closer. I know that 3 cowards just attacked a girl in a wheelchair. I know that you're all bigger than her and think that makes you tough. And I know that your parents would be ashamed if they could see you right now. The truth of Jake's words hit home, and for a moment, silence filled the hallway. Sarah watched this unfold, amazed that someone was standing up for her, but also terrified of what might happen next. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire ready to snap. Jake's words hung in the air, and Sarah could see their impact on each of the 3 boys differently. Marcus had stepped back even further, his face pale with the realization of what they had been doing. Devin shuffled his feet nervously, avoiding eye contact with everyone. But Tyler's face was flushing red with anger and embarrassment at being called out by the new kid. You think you're some kind of hero? Tyler spat, his hands clenching into fists. You don't know anything about this school or how things work here. Jake's voice remained steady, but Sarah could see the determination in his eyes. I know enough. I know that what you're doing is wrong, and I'm not going to stand by and watch it happen." Sarah's heart was pounding so hard, she was sure everyone could hear it. Part of her wanted to tell Jake to just walk away, to not risk getting hurt because of her. But another part of her, a part she had kept buried for years, felt a surge of hope. For once, someone was treating her like she was worth defending. "Jake," she said quietly. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," he interrupted, never taking his eyes off Tyler. "Where I come from, when someone needs help, you help them. No questions asked." Tyler took a step toward Jake, his posture aggressive. "This is your last warning, Texas boy. Walk away, or you're going to regret it." Jake didn't budge. Instead, he did something that surprised everyone. He smiled slightly and shook his head. "You know, my grandfather always told me that bullies are just scared people trying to make others feel as small as they do. I didn't really understand what he meant until right now." The comment hit Tyler like a slap. Being psychoanalyzed by someone his own age, especially in front of his followers, was more infuriating than any insult could have been. "That's it," he growled, lunging toward Jake with his fist raised. Jake was ready for him. Years of working on his grandfather's ranch had made him strong and quick. He sidestepped Tyler's wild swing and used the bigger boy's momentum against him, causing Tyler to stumble past him and nearly fall. It wasn't a fancy move, but it was effective, and it made Tyler look clumsy and foolish. "Stop," Sarah called out, her voice echoing off the walls. "Both of you, just stop." But Tyler was beyond listening now. His pride was wounded, and he was determined to reassert his dominance. He spun around and charged at Jake again, this time more carefully. The two boys grappled, crashing into the lockers with a loud bang that echoed through the hallway. Marcus and Devin stood frozen, unsure whether to help Tyler or run away. Sarah watched in horror as the two boys struggled, afraid that Jake was going to get seriously hurt because he had tried to help her. She looked around desperately for a teacher, an adult. Anyone who could stop this before someone got seriously injured. Jake was holding his own, but Tyler was bigger and more aggressive. They broke apart, both breathing hard, circling each other like prize fighters. Tyler's shirt was torn. "This doesn't have to continue." "Oh, it's going to continue until I teach you a lesson about minding your own business," Tyler replied, wiping blood from his nose. That's when Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She activated her wheelchair and drove it directly between the two boys, forcing them to step back. "Enough," she said, her voice carrying an authority that made everyone freeze. "Tyler, you want to pick on someone? Pick on me. I'm the one you have a problem with, right? So deal with me directly instead of hiding behind your friends or fighting Jake." Sarah. "No." Jake started to protest, but she held up her hand to stop him. "I can speak for myself," she said firmly, looking directly at Tyler. "You think I'm weak because I use a wheelchair? You think I get special treatment? Let me tell you something about my life." Tyler was caught off guard by her sudden boldness. He had expected her to cower or cry, not challenge him directly. "I get up every morning and work twice as hard as most people just to do normal things," Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I've had 16 surgeries in my 17 years. I've learned to navigate a world that wasn't built for me. I've done it with more grace and strength than you've ever shown." The hallway was completely silent now, except for Sarah's voice. Even the distant sounds of the school seemed to have faded away. "You want to know what special treatment looks like? It looks like people assuming I can't do things before I even try. It looks like being talked about instead of talked to. It looks like being seen as an inspiration or a tragedy instead of just being seen as a person." Tyler's aggressive posture was slowly deflating. Marcus and Devin looked like they wanted to disappear entirely. "And you know what the really sad part is?" Sarah continued. "I bet if you actually took the time to get to know me instead of deciding to hate me because I'm different, you might actually like me. I'm funny, I'm smart, I'm a good friend, and I care about people. But you'll never know that because you decided I wasn't worth knowing." Jake watched this transformation with amazement. The girl he had come to defend was now defending herself. With more power and eloquence than any physical force could provide, Tyler stood there, his fists still clenched, but his fight clearly draining out of him. For the first time, he was seeing Sarah as a real person rather than just a target. Her words had hit him in a way that Jake's fists never could have. I didn't. Tyler started to say something, then stopped, clearly struggling with emotions he wasn't used to feeling. Marcus spoke up for the first time since Jake had arrived. Sarah, I'm sorry. We shouldn't have. S was wrong. Devin nodded quickly in agreement. Yeah, really wrong. I'm sorry too. Sarah looked at each of them, her anger slowly being replaced by something that might have been pity. Apologies are a good start, but they don't undo what happened. They don't take back the fear you made me feel or clean up the mess you made of my schoolwork. She gestured to her papers still scattered across the floor. The weight of what they had done seemed to settle on Tyler's shoulders like a heavy blanket. He looked at Sarah's scattered papers, at the fear still lingering in her eyes despite her brave words, and at Jake, who stood ready to defend her again if necessary. For the first time in a long time, Tyler felt something he had worked hard to avoid: shame. I'll help you pick up your papers, Tyler said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. It was such a dramatic shift from his earlier aggression that everyone stared at him in surprise. No, Sarah said firmly. Jake will help me. You three need to leave. Now. Tyler nodded slowly, understanding that he had lost any right to make amends in this moment. The damage was done, and Sarah's trust, once broken, wouldn't be easily repaired. Come on, he mumbled to Marcus and Devin, and the three of them walked away down the hallway, their earlier bravado completely deflated. As soon as they were out of sight, Sarah's composure finally cracked. Her hands began to shake, and she took several deep breaths, trying to calm herself down. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation was wearing off. Leaving her feeling drained and vulnerable, Jake immediately knelt down and began gathering her scattered papers and books. Hey, are you okay? He asked gently, his voice full of concern. I think so, Sarah replied, but her voice was shaky. Thank you. You didn't have to do that? Yes, I did, Jake said simply, carefully collecting her torn essay pages and trying to put them in order. No one deserves to be treated like that, especially not someone as strong as you. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes at his words. Strong? I was terrified the whole time. Jake looked up at her from where he was kneeling on the floor. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what's right even when you are scared. What you did just now, standing up to them like that, speaking your truth, that was one of the bravest things I've ever seen. I've never done anything like that before, Sarah admitted. Usually I just try to ignore people like Tyler and hope they'll leave me alone. Well, ignoring them didn't work this time, Jake said, standing up with her gathered materials. But facing them, head-on, sure did. Sarah managed a small smile. My essay is ruined, though. I spent hours on it, and it's due next period. Jake examined the pages carefully. While some were dirty and one was torn, the writing was still legible. It's not ruined. A little dirt never hurt anyone. Mrs. Henderson will understand once you explain what happened. I don't want to explain what happened, Sarah said quickly. I don't want everyone to know about this. Jake studied her face carefully. Why not? You didn't do anything wrong, because then everyone will look at me differently. They'll see me as a victim instead of just Sarah. I hate being pitied more than I hate being bullied. Jake was quiet for a moment, considering her words. I understand that. But what if not telling anyone means Tyler and his friends think they can do this again? What if they target someone else who might not be as strong as you are? Sarah hadn't thought about that possibility, and it troubled her. She knew there were other students at Lincoln who might be easier targets. Students who might not have her inner strength or her support system. Besides, Jake continued, what they did wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. They assaulted you. That's a crime, regardless of whether you use a wheelchair or not. I know, Sarah sighed. I just wish I could handle this without making a big scene. We could start small, Jake suggested. Maybe just tell one trusted adult. Your parents? A teacher you like? Sarah considered this. There was Mrs. Patterson, the guidance counselor, who had always been supportive and understanding. She had helped Sarah navigate college applications and had never made her feel different or incapable. Maybe Mrs. Patterson, Sarah said finally. She's always been good to me. Good choice, Jake agreed. And Sarah? You don't have to handle this alone. I know we don't know each other very well, but I'm here if you need support." Something warm spread through Sarah's chest at his words. She had plenty of friends, but most of them treated her gently, like she might break if they weren't careful. Jake was talking to her like she was capable of handling difficult things, like she was strong enough to make her own decisions. "Thank you," she said simply. "Really, thank you for everything. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown up." "You would have figured it out," Jake said confidently. "You're tougher than you think." The late bell rang, echoing through the now empty hallways. Both Sarah and Jake were officially late for their next classes. "We should go," Sarah said, but she made no move to leave. She felt safer here with Jake than she had felt all morning. "Yeah, we should," Jake agreed, but he didn't move either. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why did you defend me too, Tyler?" "When you told me I didn't have to help, you could have just let me walk away," Sarah thought about his question. "Because you were willing to get hurt for me and you barely know me. That means something. It means you're a good person. And good people shouldn't suffer because they did the right thing." Jake felt something shift in his chest at her words. He had been at Lincoln for 3 weeks and hadn't made a single real friend. He had been content to remain on the outside, observing rather than participating. But this girl in front of him, this brave, articulate, strong girl, made him want to be part of something again. "Would you maybe want to eat lunch together today?" He asked the question, coming out more hesitant than he intended. If you want to. I know you probably have friends you usually sit with," Sarah's. His face lit up with a genuine smile, the first real smile she had managed all day. "I would like that very much. My friend Maya will probably want to interrogate you thoroughly. But she means well." "I can handle interrogation," Jake said with a grin. "I have 3 older sisters back in Texas. I'm practically an expert at being grilled by teenage girls," as they finally began moving toward their respective classrooms. Sarah felt something she hadn't expected to feel after such a traumatic morning. Hope that maybe this incident, as terrible as it had been, might lead to something good. Hope that Jake Morrison might become more than just the quiet new kid from Texas. And Jake, walking beside her as she navigated toward the main hallway, felt something he hadn't felt since moving to Lincoln, like he might actually belong here after all. Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows raised slightly when Sarah wheeled into English class 15 minutes late, followed closely by Jake Morrison. The teacher had been at Lincoln High for 12 years and prided herself on reading students well. She could see immediately that something significant had happened to both of them. "Miss Martinez." "Mr. Morrison," she said in her crisp but kind voice, "I trust there's a good reason for your tardiness." Sarah and Jake exchanged glances. They had agreed in the hallway that Sarah would handle any questions for now, while they figured out how much to tell and to whom. Double quotes, yes. Sarah replied, her voice steady. There was a situation in the hallway that needed to be addressed. "I have my essay ready to turn in, though some of the pages got a bit damaged." Mrs. Henderson's experienced eyes noted the slight tremor in Sarah's hands, the protective way Jake positioned himself near her desk, and the small cut on Jake's lip. She had seen enough drama over the years to recognize the aftermath of trouble. "I see," she said simply. "Please take your seats. We'll discuss this after class if needed." Sarah felt a wave of gratitude toward her. "Teacher!" Mrs. Henderson could have demanded an immediate explanation in front of the entire class. But instead she had given them privacy and dignity. It was exactly the kind of understanding Sarah had hoped for as the class progressed through their discussion of symbolism and literature. Sarah found herself thinking about the morning's events with new perspective. The mockingbird in Harper Lee's novel was supposed to represent innocence destroyed by evil. But Sarah didn't feel destroyed. Shaken, yes. Angry, absolutely. But not destroyed. Jake, sitting 2 rows behind her, found himself watching the back of Sarah's head and marveling at her resilience. She was participating normally in class discussion, her insights as sharp as ever, giving no outward sign of the trauma she had experienced just an hour earlier. He was beginning to understand that her strength wasn't just physical, it was emotional and intellectual as well. When the bell rang, Mrs. Henderson gestured for both Sarah and Jake to remain behind. As the other students filed out, chattering about weekend plans and homework complaints, the three of them were left alone in the quiet classroom. "Now then," Mrs. Henderson said, settling behind her desk, "would either of you like to tell me what really happened this morning?" Sarah looked at Jake, then took a deep breath. "I was attacked by 3 students in the hallway near the gymnasium. They surrounded me, grabbed my wheelchair, scattered my papers, and were trying to tip my chair over." Mrs. Henderson's face darkened immediately. "I see. And Mr. Morrison?" "I came around the corner and saw what was happening. I intervened," Jake said simply. "These 3 students, do you know their names?" Sarah hesitated. She had gone back and forth about this decision all through English class. Part of her wanted to protect Tyler, Marcus, and Devin from the consequences of their actions. Part of her was afraid of retaliation. But Jake's words about protecting other potential victims kept echoing in her mind. "Tyler Brooks, Marcus Chen, and Devin Williams," she said finally. Mrs. Henderson wrote the names down with sharp, angry strokes of her pen. "Sarah, I want you to know that what happened to you is completely unacceptable. No student should ever feel unsafe in our hallways." "It's okay," Sarah started to say automatically, but Mrs. Henderson held up a hand to stop her. "No, it's not okay. It will never be okay. And I don't want to hear you minimize what happened to you." The teacher's voice was firm, but compassionate. "Jake, thank you for intervening." That took courage. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Anyone would have done the same thing. "Actually, they wouldn't have," Mrs. Henderson replied sadly. "I wish that weren't true, but it is. Most people would have looked the other way or convinced themselves. It wasn't their business." Sarah felt a fresh wave of gratitude toward Jake. She was beginning to realize just how special his intervention had been. "Now," Mrs. Henderson continued, "we need to report this to the administration immediately. Sarah, you'll need to speak with Principal Martinez, no relation, I assume. And possibly the police." "The police?" Sarah's voice was small. "Is that really necessary? What happened to you was assault, possibly even a hate crime given that you were targeted because of your disability." "Yes, it's necessary." The word disability hung in the air. Sarah rarely thought of herself in those terms, preferring to focus on her abilities rather than what she couldn't do. But she understood that legally, a distinction mattered. "Mrs. Henderson," Jake interjected, "would it be possible for me to go with Sarah when she reports this?" "As a witness, I mean." The teacher smiled at him approvingly. "That's very thoughtful of you, Jake." "Yes. I think having a witness present would be helpful." As they prepared to leave for the principal's office, Mrs. Henderson called Sarah's name one more time. "Sarah, I've had you in class for almost 4 months now. I've watched you tackle difficult literature, lead class discussions, and help struggling classmates. You are one of the strongest students I've ever taught. Don't let what happened this morning make you forget that." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes again, but this time they were good tears. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. That means a lot. And Jake," the teacher added, "I'm glad Lincoln High has students like you. Your actions this morning reflect the kind of character we hope to instill in all our students as they made their way to the administrative offices." Sarah felt nervous but determined. The hallways that had felt threatening just a few hours ago now seemed normal again, filled with the usual chaos of passing periods. "Are you sure you want to be involved in all this?" Sarah asked Jake as they waited outside Principal Martinez's office. "This is probably going to get messy. And you've only been here 3 weeks, Sarah," Jake said, turning to face her directly. "My grandfather always told me that when you see something wrong happening, you have 2 choices. You can be part of the problem by staying silent, or you can be part of the solution by speaking up. I chose to be part of the solution this morning, and I'm going to keep choosing that." The principal's office door opened. Mrs. Garcia, the secretary, gestured for them to come in. Principal Martinez was a tall, imposing woman in her 50s who had earned a reputation for being fair but tough. She listened intently as Sarah recounted the morning's events, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but never interrupting the flow of her story. Jake provided his account as a witness, describing exactly what he had seen and how he had intervened. His calm, factual recounting of events seemed to impress Principal Martinez, who took detailed notes throughout both testimonies. Sarah, I want you to know that this behavior is absolutely not tolerated at Lincoln High, Principal Martinez said when they had finished. We will be conducting a full investigation. There will be serious consequences for the students involved. What kind of consequences? Sarah asked quietly. That will depend on the investigation, but at minimum, we're looking at suspension, mandatory counseling, and possibly expulsion depending on their disciplinary history. Tyler Brooks, in particular, has had previous incidents. Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. Part of her felt guilty about the trouble Tyler and the others would face, but a larger part of her felt relieved that the school was taking this seriously. We'll also be contacting your parents, Principal Martinez continued. And I'll need to file a report with the district and possibly law enforcement. My parents are going to be so worried, Sarah said. Suddenly realizing how this news would affect her family, they have a right to know what happened to their daughter, the principal replied gently, and they'll want to support you through this process. As they left the principal's office an hour later, Sarah felt emotionally drained, but also oddly lighter. The secret was out, the wheels of justice were turning, and she no longer had to carry the burden of the morning's events alone. How are you feeling? Jake asked as they walked toward the cafeteria for lunch. Scared, relieved, guilty, angry, all at the same time, Sarah admitted. Is that normal? I think after what you've been through, any feelings you have are normal, Jake replied. You don't have to have it all figured out right now, as they entered the cafeteria. Sarah spotted Maya at their usual table near the windows. Her best friend took one look at Sarah's face and immediately stood up, concern written across her features. Sarah, where have you been? You missed calculus, and Mr. Peterson was asking about you, Maya said. Then noticed Jake standing beside Sarah's wheelchair. Oh, hi, Jake. Maya, this is Jake Morrison. Jake, this is my best friend Maya, Sarah said. Managing a smile despite everything. Nice to officially meet you, Jake said, extending his hand to Maya, who shook it while studying both of their faces with the intensity of a detective. Okay, what happened? Maya demanded as they all sat down. And don't tell me nothing, because I can see it all over both your faces. Sarah and Jake exchanged glances. They had talked about this on the way to lunch, how much to tell their friends, how to handle the inevitable questions and gossip that would follow. Some students gave me trouble this morning, Sarah said carefully. Jake helped me out. We reported it to the administration. Maya's eyes widened. What kind of trouble? Who? Are you okay? I'm okay, Sarah assured her friend. Shaken up, but okay? I'll tell you more later, but right now I just wanna... Sarah, I need to speak with you, Principal Martinez said, her expression serious, but not unkind. Maya and Jake immediately looked concerned, and Sarah felt her stomach drop. Of course, Sarah replied, though her voice came out smaller than she intended. Your parents are here. They'd like to see you in my office. Sarah's heart began racing again. She had known this moment would come, but she wasn't prepared for it to happen so soon. Her parents, Maria and David Martinez, were protective under normal circumstances. Learning that their daughter had been attacked at school was going to devastate them. Would it be okay if Jake came with me? Sarah asked. As the witness, I mean? Principal Martinez nodded. That would be appropriate. Mr. Morrison, if you're comfortable with that. Of course, Jake said immediately, standing up from the lunch table. Maya grabbed Sarah's hand. Do you want me to come too? Thanks, but I think I need to do this with just my parents and Jake, Sarah replied, squeezing her friend's hand gratefully as they made their way back to the administrative offices. Sarah's mind raced with worry about how her parents would react. Her mother in particular had a tendency to become overprotective when Sarah faced any kind of difficulty. This incident might cause her parents to want to pull her out of Lincoln entirely when they entered the principal's office. Sarah saw her parents sitting in chairs across from Principal Martinez's desk. Her mother's eyes were red-rimmed, and her father's jaw was set in the way it got when he was trying to control his anger. Mia, her mother said, immediately standing and moving to Sarah's wheelchair to hug her tightly. Are you hurt? Are you okay? I'm okay, Mom, Sarah assured her, returning the hug. Really, I'm okay. Her father stood more slowly, his eyes taking in every detail of Sarah's appearance, looking for signs of injury. When his gaze fell on Jake, standing respectfully near the door, his expression softened slightly. Dad, Mom, this is Jake Morrison. He's the one who helped me this morning. David Martinez crossed the room and extended his hand to Jake, gripping it firmly. Thank you, he said simply. But the emotion in his voice conveyed much more than those two words. You don't need to thank me, sir, Jake replied. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, Maria Martinez said, wiping her eyes. Not everyone would have. You put yourself at risk to help our daughter. That means everything to us. Principal Martinez gestured for everyone to sit down. I've been explaining to Mr. and Mrs. Martinez what we know about this morning's incident and what steps we're taking in response. What exactly are those steps? David asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. All 3 students involved have been suspended pending a full investigation. Tyler Brooks will face a disciplinary hearing that could result in expulsion, given his previous incidents. Marcus Chen and Devin Williams will undergo mandatory counseling and will not be allowed to return to classes until they complete an anti-bullying program. Sarah's mother shook her head. Suspension isn't enough. These boys attacked our daughter. They could have seriously injured her. I understand your frustration, Mrs. Martinez. That's why we're also involving the police. Officer Rodriguez from the school liaison program will be interviewing Sarah and Jake this afternoon to determine if criminal charges should be filed. Sarah felt her stomach lurch. Criminal charges? What happened to you was assault, Sarah, Principal Martinez explained gently. The fact that you use a wheelchair makes it a potential hate crime. These are serious offenses. Jake watched Sarah's parents carefully, seeing how they struggled between wanting justice and wanting to protect their daughter from further trauma. He understood their dilemma because he was feeling something similar himself. Sarah, her father, said carefully, What do you want to happen? It was such a David Martinez question, Sarah thought. Even in his anger and worry, he was making sure her voice was heard, her preferences considered. It was one of the things she loved most about her father. I want them to understand that what they did was wrong, Sarah said slowly, thinking through her feelings. I want them to get help so they don't do this to someone else. But I also want to move forward with my life without this defining me. Those are all reasonable goals. Principal Martinez said. The disciplinary actions we're taking should address the first 2. As for the third, it's partly up to the school community and how we handle this moving forward. Maria Martinez looked concerned. What do you mean? Word of this incident will spread among the students. We can try to control the narrative by addressing it proactively, perhaps through an assembly about bullying and inclusivity. Or we can try to handle it quietly and hope it doesn't become a bigger issue. Sarah considered this. She hated the idea of being the center of a school-wide discussion about bullying. But she also understood that her experience might help other students. What do you think would be more effective? She asked. Honestly, I think addressing it openly sends a stronger message that this behavior won't be tolerated. But it also means less privacy for you. Jake spoke up for the first time since the meeting began. Sarah, whatever you decide, you won't be facing it alone. I mean, if you want the support. Sarah looked at this boy who had already done so much for her, who was offering to do even more. You really mean that? Absolutely. What happened this morning showed me what kind of person you are. You're someone worth standing with. Sarah's parents exchanged glances, and she could see them reevaluating Jake with new respect. Her mother, who was usually suspicious of any boy who showed interest in Sarah, was looking at Jake with something approaching approval. Jake, David Martinez said, Would you mind if I asked you a personal question? Not at all, sir. Why did you get involved this morning? You barely know Sarah. You're new to the school, and standing up to 3 bigger boys put you at considerable risk. Jake was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. My grandfather raised me, sir. He always said that the measure of a person isn't what they do when people are watching, but what they do when no one else is around, and they have a choice between doing what's easy and doing what's right. Your grandfather sounds like a wise man, Maria said softly. He was, ma'am. He passed away 6 months ago, which is part of why we moved here. But I try to live by the things he taught me. Sarah felt her heart squeeze at this revelation. Jake had been dealing with grief while adjusting to a new school, new life, and yet he had still found the courage to help her. "Jake," she said quietly, "I'm sorry about your grandfather. You must miss him terribly." "Every day," Jake admitted. "But I think he would have been proud of what happened this morning. Not the fight part, but the standing up part." Principal Martinez cleared her throat gently. "I hate to interrupt, but we need to make some decisions about how to proceed. Sarah, your parents, I need to know how you want to handle the publicity aspect of this." Sarah looked around the room at the faces of people who cared about her well-being. Her parents, worried and protective. Principal Martinez, professional but compassionate. And Jake, who had already proven he would stand by her side. "I think we should address it openly," Sarah said finally. "Not because I want attention, but because maybe my experience can help prevent this from happening to someone else. And maybe it can help other students understand that people with disabilities are just people who deserve the same respect as everyone else." Her father smiled proudly. "That's my brave daughter." But Sarah continued, looking directly at Jake. "I want to do it with Jake. If this is going to become a school-wide discussion, then the person who stood up for what's right should be recognized too." Jake looked uncomfortable with the idea of recognition, but he nodded. "If that's what you want, then yes. We'll face it together." As the meeting concluded, and they prepared to meet with the police officer. Sarah felt a shift in her understanding of the day's events. What had started as the worst morning of her high school career was transforming into something else entirely. It was becoming the beginning of a friendship that might change both of their lives forever. 3 weeks later, Sarah wheeled into the Lincoln High auditorium for the special assembly that Principal Martinez had organized. The entire student body was present, along with faculty and several parents who had requested to attend. Sarah's stomach was filled with butterflies, but she felt ready. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of activity. Officer Rodriguez had interviewed both Sarah and Jake extensively, and criminal charges had indeed been filed against Tyler, Marcus, and Devin. Tyler, as the ringleader, and due to his previous disciplinary issues, was facing the most serious charges and had been expelled from Lincoln. Marcus and Devin were allowed to return to school after completing community service and anti-bullying counseling, but they were required to stay away from Sarah. More importantly for Sarah, the 3 weeks had allowed her friendship with Jake to deepen in ways she hadn't expected. What had begun as gratitude for his intervention had evolved into something much more meaningful. They studied together, ate lunch together, and had spent countless hours talking about everything from literature to life goals to their families. Jake had told her more about his grandfather, a man named William Morrison who had served in Vietnam and then dedicated his life to helping troubled youth on his ranch in Texas. Sarah had shared stories about her own journey, her surgeries, her fears, and her dreams of becoming a biochemist. They had discovered a mutual love of old movies, terrible puns, and philosophical discussions that lasted well into the evening over text messages. Maya, who had been skeptical of any boy getting close to her best friend, had been won over by Jake's genuine nature and his obvious respect for Sarah. "He looks at you like you're the most interesting person in the room," she had told Sarah one day. "Not like you're fragile or need protecting, but like you're fascinating." Now, as Principal Martinez stepped up to the podium to address the packed auditorium, Sarah felt Jake's reassuring presence beside her in the front row. He had insisted they sit together, unified in whatever came next. Students, faculty, and parents. Principal Martinez began, her voice carrying clearly through the large space. "We're here today to discuss something that happened in our hallways 3 weeks ago. Something that challenges us to examine who we are as a school community and who we want to be." The auditorium was unusually quiet. Word of the incident had indeed spread throughout the school, as predicted, but the official story being told now was the first time many students were hearing the full truth. 3 of our students made a choice to target and attack a fellow student because they perceived her as different, as vulnerable. They were wrong on both counts. Principal Martinez went on to describe the incident without naming the perpetrators, focusing instead on the broader issues of bullying, inclusivity, and the responsibility each student had to create a safe environment for everyone. But today, I want to focus not on those who chose hatred, but on those who chose courage. Sarah Martinez and Jake Morrison, would you please join me on stage? Sarah's heart pounded as she activated her wheelchair and made her way up the ramp to the stage. Jake walked beside her, his presence calm and steadying. The auditorium was completely silent as they positioned themselves next to the podium. Sarah, Principal Martinez said, would you like to share your thoughts with your fellow students? Sarah had been preparing for this moment for days, but now that it was here, all her rehearsed words seemed inadequate. Instead, she spoke from her heart. 3 weeks ago, I was attacked in a hallway of our school, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone. 3 students surrounded me, grabbed my wheelchair, scattered my belongings, and tried to tip my chair over while calling me names and telling me I didn't belong here. A murmur ran through the audience, and Sarah could see shock and anger on many faces. I want to be clear about something, Sarah continued. I wasn't attacked because I did something wrong or because I provoked anyone. I was attacked because I use a wheelchair. These students thought that made me an easy target. She paused, gathering her courage for the next part. But they were wrong. Yes, I use a wheelchair. Yes, I face challenges that many of you don't face. But I'm not weak. I'm not helpless. And I'm not less than anyone else in this room. I'm a student with a 4.0 GPA who's been accepted to 4 universities. I'm someone who volunteers at the animal shelter and tutors struggling students in chemistry. I'm a person who has hopes and dreams and fears just like all of you. The auditorium was completely silent now, every student hanging on her words. The reason I'm telling you this isn't because I want your pity or your sympathy. It's because I want you to understand something important. Every person in this school has value. Every person deserves respect. And when you see someone being hurt or targeted or bullied, you have a choice to make. Sarah turned slightly toward Jake. Jake Morrison made his choice 3 weeks ago. He's been at our school for less than 2 months. He didn't know me well, and stepping in put him at risk. But he chose to help anyway, because he understood something that everyone should understand. We're all responsible for each other. Jake looked uncomfortable with the attention. But Sarah wasn't finished. Jake didn't help me because he felt sorry for me. He helped me because what was happening was wrong, and he had the courage to do something about it. That's the kind of person I want to be friends with. That's the kind of person I want to go to school with. That's the kind of person I hope all of you will choose to be. Sarah paused, looking out at the sea of faces in the auditorium. She could see some students wiping their eyes, others nodding in agreement, and many looking thoughtful and reflective. I'm not going to pretend that what happened to me didn't hurt. It did hurt, physically and emotionally. But I'm not going to let it define me or change who I am. I'm still the same Sarah I was before this happened. I'm still going to participate in school activities, still going to push myself academically, still going to dream big dreams. She took a deep breath for her final thoughts. But I hope that what happened to me will change all of you, just a little bit. I hope it will make you more aware of how you treat people who are different from you. I hope it will make you more willing to speak up when you see someone being hurt. And I hope it will remind you that the choices you make every day to include or exclude, to help or ignore, to stand up or stay silent, those choices matter more than you might think. The auditorium erupted in applause, and Sarah felt tears of relief and gratitude fill her eyes. She had done it. She had turned her worst experience into something potentially positive for her entire school community. Principal Martinez stepped back to the microphone. Jake, would you like to add anything? Jake moved closer to the microphone, clearly nervous but determined. I just want to say that what happened 3 weeks ago wasn't about me being a hero. It was about doing what anyone should do when they see someone in trouble. His voice grew stronger as he continued. My grandfather always told me that the world is divided into 2 kinds of people, those who see problems and walk away, and those who see problems and try to fix them. Sarah Martinez is someone who tries to fix problems. Even after being attacked, She's up here trying to make things better for everyone else. That's real courage. Jake turned to look at Sarah. I'm proud to be her friend. And I'm proud to go to a school where someone like Sarah can turn something terrible into something that makes everyone stronger, as they made there, way off the stage together. Sarah felt lighter than she had in weeks. The assembly continued with Principal Martinez outlining new anti-bullying initiatives and ways for students to report problems. But Sarah's part was done. Back in their seats, Jake leaned over and whispered, "You were amazing up there." "We were amazing," Sarah corrected. "Thank you for doing this with me." "Thank you for including me," Jake replied. "Your grandfather would be proud of you too, you know." Sarah felt her cheeks warm at his words. Over the past 3 weeks, she had come to realize that her feelings for Jake had grown beyond friendship, though she wasn't sure if he felt the same way. He was kind to everyone, protective of anyone who needed it. And she sometimes wondered if his attention to her was just part of his character rather than something special. As the assembly concluded and students began filing out of the auditorium, many stopped to speak with Sarah and Jake. Some offered support and thanks. Others shared their own experiences with bullying. And a few even apologized for times they had failed to speak up when they should. Maya appeared at Sarah's side as the crowd thinned. "You two were incredible up there. I think you actually changed some minds today." "I hope so," Sarah said. "I hope this means something." "It already means something," a voice said behind them. They turned to see Marcus Chen standing nervously a few feet away. He looked pale and uncertain but determined. "Marcus," Sarah said, surprised but not afraid. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to apologize," he said quietly. "Not just for what we did, but for who I was. The counseling I've been going through has helped me understand things I never thought about." 4. Sarah studied his face, looking for signs of sincerity. What she saw was genuine remorse and shame. "What you said up there about everyone having value," Marcus continued. "I never thought about that before. I just went along with Tyler because I